Thank you, Randy. Thank you for having me, and welcome everybody to talk about the subscription business model, something I'm quite passionate about because as I look out in the economy, I see the subscription economy growing. It's projected to be $1.5 trillion by the year 2025, which is quite substantial. Most of our unicorns out there, businesses valued over $1 billion, are running on the subscription business model. And I think that's where we should start. So, Bailey, if you can go to the next slide for me, let's start by talking about business models. The late Andy Grove, founder of Intel, he said disruptive threats come inherently not from new technology, but from new business models. So, if you think about it, technology absolutely can enable a business model. It's a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient to be disruptive. A new business model is what is disruptive. If you think about what Napster did to music, people downloading Napster, and the music industry thought they had a crime wave on their hands because we had all these teenagers, stealing our intellectual property. Well, when you have millions of people downloading billions of your product for free, you don't have a crime wave. You have a business model problem. And so if we look at what the music industry has done, Steve Jobs stepped in, kind of saved it and said, no, don't buy a $20 CD. Come to iTunes and buy $1 a song, put it on my iPod, which is an escape from reality. Create your own playlist, play whatever you're in the mood for. And that was a different business model. And then, of course, now today, we changed the business model again because now we're streaming music from Spotify or Apple or Amazon Prime or whoever. And that's a business model change. And that's where threats come from. Look at Uber and taxi cabs, look at Airbnb and hotels. I mean, we could go down the list. I have no idea what Chat GPT is going to do to Google, but it's a threat. It's a threat. Now, I'm not sure what their business model is yet, but it's going to be interesting to see that unwind. But if we go to the next slide, Bailey, let me define what a business model is so we can be very clear what we're talking about. A business model is how your company creates value for your customers and how you capture a portion of that value. So creation and capture. Capture is obviously part of your pricing strategies, but creating value is part of your revenue model and your business model. And this is a really important thing to consider in any business because these things change. They're dynamic. Customers change their mind. They're offered new products. Old industries get disruptive. So the business model, again, is how you create and how you capture a portion of the value. So I like to start with this very provocative question, if we can go to the next slide, Bailey, which is, we kind of call this the ultimate question. What would happen if Disney entered your industry? Now, it doesn't matter if you're an accounting firm or if you're a mechanic shop. Think about that for a minute. Would they see your industry as a commodity? You think their pricing would be higher or lower than yours or the same? What would they do differently? Would the customer experience be different? I think this is all very provocative. We actually asked this for the very first time of funeral homes because they were kind of, moaning about becoming a commodity. After all, you can get cremated, for $800. You can buy a casket at Costco for $400. I mean, we heard this over this conference for a few days. And on the ending keynote, we asked them, well, what would happen if Disney entered funerals? And you could have heard a pin drop in that room because that really makes you think about what could we do to make the experience different? Or Bailey, if we go to the next slide, what would Walt Disney, how would he plus the experience in your world, in your business? Walt had this concept of plussing, and he applied this to Disneyland. He says, I make a movie, it goes into the can. There's not much I can do with it. But the park, Disneyland, is a living and breathing thing we need to constantly plus it. We need to constantly delight the guest, give them some unexpected surprises, discoveries to keep them coming back year after year after year. And that's why he wanted his people outside in the park watching the guests, seeing that they were having a good experience. Because, of course, Disneyland is all about happiness and memories, family memories, and that type of thing. So, this idea of plussing is very, very important in the subscription model. And the subscription business model is a business model change. And when you change a business model, you not only change how you create value, you change how you capture that value. So your pricing strategy changes. We go from buying, $20 CDs to buying $1 a song on iTunes, and now we're all streaming music, right? We go from paying taxi cabs with change that we have to pull out of our wallet in the rain or whatever to just having it on an app and it hits our credit card, and there could be peak pricing. So Uber has a different pricing strategy than taxi cabs. And same with Airbnb and hotels. But the other thing that changes when you change a business model is what you measure internally, your so-called dashboard, your so-called KPIs, your key performance indicators. They change as well. And in subscription, it even goes one step further. Your accounting statements change. Your income statement doesn't look the same. And what you're paying attention to, what's on your radar screen, if you will, changes when you change a business model. So people normally think of subscription and they think, oh, yeah, that's when you pay monthly. Folks, it's so much more than that, because subscription demands that you plus your offering. And I'm going to give you a few examples of this in the real world so you can see how this unfolds. But plussing, that baked in innovation, is a big part of this model. This is why you see Amazon Prime and other subscription services, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, they're constantly putting out content. They're constantly giving you new ways to uh, access them and new experiences. In other words, they're plussing. They're constantly adding value. And it's not necessarily tied to the price. They're doing this continuously. And that's a really big part of this model. So, Bailey, if we go to the next slide, I will give you the definition of the subscription business model. And that is, if we can advance, yeah, there you go. What is the subscription model? It's a periodic, recurring payment for frictionless, ever increasing value. Now, by frictionless, I mean it's hassle free. So we want to make the customer experience as easy, as painless as possible. We want to reduce the transaction costs to the customer. If you think about Uber, it reduced the transaction costs. Think same thing with Airbnb. You can find a place exactly where you want it in the city that you're going. You don't have to expend as much shoe leather. You don't have to research on the internet as much. You don't have to worry about the owner of the property ripping you off, because Airbnb facilitates and monitors the transaction to make sure everybody's happy. There's an internal rating system where the buyer rates the seller and the seller rates the buyer, and same with Uber and all of that. So lowering the customer's transaction costs, taking that cognitive load off of which one should I buy? What happens if it breaks? What if I need to get a big expensive repair? How do I dispose of it when it's no longer working or it's done? All of those things are transaction costs, and we normally don't think about them, but they're part of the price as well. All prices are really transaction costs. The price you pay for a product or service is just one component of the price of accessing it, right? The cost of getting it, selecting it, maybe returning it if it doesn't fit or whatever. All of these are transaction costs. The subscription insists that you lower and you make it as friction and as easy as possible. And what are the advantages of doing this? Bailey, if we could go to the next slide, I can show you some of the long-term advantages of the subscription model. Is the big one is you have predictable revenue. And that's really important because predictable revenue is valued by the market much higher than unpredictable revenue. Think of it this way, and I'm sorry for the sports analogy, but with subscription, because you have this annual recurring revenue that you've built up a track record over time of, you start at the 50-yard line every day. You're not starting in the end zone or on the 10-yard line where you have to constantly market and feed the funnel and go out and do RFPs and sales calls and cold calling and all the other things we do to get customers, because you have a core base of customers who love you and appreciate you, and they're paying you predictable revenue. And that's really, really a lot more valuable when you go to exit your business. You're going to get a higher multiple of revenue or profit than you would in the absence of annual recurring revenue. You're locking your customer in because there's higher switching costs. It'd be very difficult for me to give up Amazon at this point because, one click, they know my preferences, they know what I've ordered before. They made it so easy. I one click, it comes the same day sometimes next day. I mean, the switching cost to me of establishing that type of relationship with another seller would be very, very intense. And I'm just not willing to do it. You're not selling products and services, but really what you're doing with subscription is you're creating lifetime annuities that are more valuable than the cost to acquire them. And therefore, the focus in the subscription model is driving customer lifetime value. That's really what you're trying to increase. It's not so much the bottom line profit, it's customer lifetime value. And that's what makes the business more valuable. And I think that's what makes the customer experience more pleasurable and frictionless and simple, because we're no longer worried about the math of the moment. This is not a transactional model where you're selling services or SKUs or products or whatever. No, it's a relationship model. So we're moving from transactional to relational. And then your collective knowledge about your customer, because you have this deep personal relationship, because you know a lot more about them than the average transactional business, you can find ways to plus that offering, make it more valuable. So when you do have a price increase, it's much more palpable. Some of you probably were notified last year that your Amazon Prime membership was increasing. And notice that Amazon did not blame it on rising costs. They did not blame it on inflation. They did not blame it on supply chain problems. They laid out in bullet points all the ways in the last couple years since their last price increase of the ways that they've added more value. We have more cities that are same day delivery. We've added Thursday night football. We've added Kindle benefits. We've added this, that. Now, folks, I have to be honest with you, 90% of what they added, I never use. But it didn't matter because it threw a halo over what I do use and just made me perceive Amazon as being much more valuable, and the Prime membership just being that much more of a no-brainer, even when they increased the cost. So one of the very powerful things about the architectural design of the subscription model is your customers stop looking for alternatives. And that's exactly what's happened with Amazon Prime and these other examples I'm going to show you. And then, of course, this gives you the chance for one-to-one marketing. And, since we're not pricing a service or a product, we're now pricing a relationship and peace of mind to the customer. And so we don't look at the math of the moment anymore. We look at that customer lifetime value. And those are the big advantages of the subscription model. And I'll show you how this plays out in very tangible ways with a couple of examples. If we can go to the next slide, Bailey. This is known as the revenue model question. And it's usually ignored when we're designing a business model, unless you have there's a great book out there on the modeling business model design. But the revenue model question is usually confused with the pricing question. The pricing question is, how much do we want our customers to pay? Or how much do we think our customers would pay for this offering? But that's different. The revenue model question asks, what are we asking our customers to pay for? So think about Fender Play, and I believe Fender is the largest guitar manufacturer in the world. When the CEO of Fender was interviewed, he said, the problem with selling guitars is people buy them, they're all excited. They usually have lessons lined up, maybe, and they really want to learn. And he said, 90% of guitar players quit within 6 months. And he said the guitar goes under the bed or in the closet. And then, they gift it to their nephew. And then that takes away another sale from Fender because now the nephew is not going to, buy it. And then, of course, he's probably going to give up and give it to somebody else. So this is terrible. He said, so we started Fender Play. Fender Play was a digital library, over 3,000 videos, probably much more today, where you can learn at any level, wherever you're at, beginner, intermediate, advanced, expert, probably even beyond. They have a library of videos. And when COVID struck in 2020 and we went into lockdown, of course, we had time. We were baking, we were learning languages, learning new things. They made Fender Play available for 3 months. 1 million people signed up within a week, crashed their servers, crashed their website. But Fender in 2020, 2021, 2022 ended up selling more guitars in those 3 years than they had in any year in their corporate history. It was a boon to them. And what the CEO said about it was, he said, realize that we're not selling guitars. We're not asking our customers to pay for a guitar. A guitar is a means to an end. The end is musicianship. We're selling the ability to play at the level the customer aspires to. So if that beginner, if it's intermediate, advanced, expert, whatever, rock star, we can help them transform to whatever level they aspire to. And that's really what they're selling, is musicianship. Now that's a completely different mindset than counting the number of guitars that you sell, because now you get into the Fender ecosystem. As you go through the stages of advanced, beginning, expert, all of that, you're going to trade up and you're going to buy different guitars. And I think at some point, Fender's going to be able, you're going to just be able to subscribe to Fender. I don't care about the guitar. The guitar is just a means to an end. Sure, I want the guitar that is going to play at my musical ability, but what I'm really after is musicianship. And it's the same thing with Synsam, which is the largest optical chain in Scandinavia. And when the young people who started Synsam, they said, having glasses and contact, it's a pain. This whole process is a pain. You got to go to the doctor. You got to get an eye exam. Maybe another doctor does that. Then you got to go over here for the glasses. And then you got to wait until the glasses are made, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and geez, if you've got some type of eye problem where you need a second exam in a year and the prescription changes, well, then you got to go back and do the whole process. They said, this is just too complicated. It's too much transaction cost imposed on the customer. They started a subscription. Now they're up to 280,000 customers that subscribe to Synsam. And everybody in the industry, because it's a very mature, very staid industry, hasn't changed in forever, starting to a little bit, but these guys have really pushed the envelope. Synsam, they said, this will never work. This will never work. Nobody's going to subscribe to eyeglasses and eye exams. And the founders were like, we're not asking them to subscribe to eyeglasses and eyewear. They're subscribing to perfect eyesight. And when you message it like that, when you market it like that, that's a totally different value proposition. From what I can tell, it's about $125 a month to subscribe to Synsam. But if you do need 2 eye exams in the same year and your prescription changes, they'll upgrade all your lenses. It's all inclusive. There's no more, going over to the department of paperwork for this and my prescription's expired. No, they just make it hassle-free. They give you convenience. They give you peace of mind that as best as humanly possible, clinically, they're going to give you perfect eyesight. And that's the goal. That's the outcome. And that's what I think businesses need to focus on, is what is the ultimate outcome? The products and services that we buy are just means to an end. This is the old saw that nobody buys a drill bit and a drill. You buy a hole in the wall so you can hang a picture or a portrait or something. you're trying to get a specific outcome or more meaningful, what I would call is a transformation. And Bailey, if we go to the next slide, I'll give you another great example. That's, you talk about disruption. Concierge doctors and direct primary care doctors are probably the biggest disruptors right now going on across the United States. These are doctors that usually have come out of residency, like Dr. Paul Thomas here, founder of Plum Health, which is outside of Detroit. And you subscribe to Dr. Paul or his office, you subscribe to Plum Health. Now they're direct primary care physicians, so they're primary care. You're not going to get heart surgery from Dr. Paul. He's not going to be able to cure your cancer or do a knee replacement or a hip replacement. But as a general physician, he can handle 60% of most people's medical issues. And when you subscribe to Dr. Paul, you are covered for anything that Dr. Paul does inside his office. And he'll even come to your home or your office, by the way. And one of the big reasons he's able to do that is while the average general physician in the United States has a panel of patients of 2,400, Dr. Paul limits each doctor to 600 patients. And therefore, running at 25% capacity of the normal GP, he's not seeing 50 or 60 people a day. His office doesn't even have a waiting room. The average appointment time is not 5 minutes with Dr. Paul, like most general physicians. It's over an hour, a lot of times 2 hours, because he's not just there to cure you when you're sick. He's there to keep you healthy. He lowers comorbidities. He lowers ER visits. He lowers hospital stays. He lowers the number of drugs his patients take because he's trying to get you healthy. He's helping you lose weight, if that's your goal, depression, if that's an issue, whatever it is, he's there to keep you healthy. And that's a different mindset. And we've been interviewing Dr. Paul on my radio show. When he started right out of residency into this model. He never went into a traditional fee-for-service model. He said, because it just burns physicians out. This is why we have a chronic shortage of general physicians, because they have to see 60 people a day. And he said, that's not why I became a doctor. I became a doctor to help people. You can't help people if you have 2,400 customers. We're kidding ourselves. So he's landed on this direct primary care physician model. And there's 1,900 of these practices across the United States. They're in all 50 states. There's a map online. I think it's dpcfinder.org, where you can see where these individual practices are. And just to show you how big this trend is, Bailey, if we go to the next slide, and you probably saw this if you're an Amazon Prime member, Amazon has just purchased One Medical, which is the largest DPC practice across the United States. I think they paid $3.4 billion for it. If you're a Prime member, you can subscribe to One Medical and have your own personal physician for $144. That's $12 a month. Dr. Paul is about $100 a month. Other DPCs can be 200, some can be 300. Concierge doctors are going after the top income earners in the country, so they can be anywhere from $8,000 to $36,000 or $40,000 a year for a married couple, that type of thing. But the DPC doctors that are out there are really changing how healthcare is delivered in this country. They don't accept insurance, but at the cost of a mobile phone or a cable bill every month, have access to a doctor that you can text, you can send pictures, 24/7, 365, you have access. And, Dr. Paul will get back to you within like 10 minutes. I've texted him before. It's amazing. It's really an incredible level of service. It gives me peace of mind. It's frictionless, it's convenient, and it's a form of insurance that if something happens, I can at least call Dr. Paul and get a medical opinion almost instantaneously. Now, if he tells me go to the ER, I'll go to the ER, but he might tell me just no, come in and see me and we can take care of this, because he knows so much about you. And yeah, do I sound like a salesman for DPC doc? You bet, because I see this as really revamping the professional landscape. And I think whether you're an attorney, an architect, a CPA, a bookkeeper, an accountant, an enrolled agent, whatever you are, you can have the same mindset of just taking care of your customer and just making it easy and convenient and frictionless for them and build that lifetime value. And Bailey, if we go to the next slide, this will show you the difference in the accounting statements between a traditional business, transactional type business. We have, sales and cost of goods sold and all of that. And look what the subscription model does. You start with annual recurring revenue. You back out churn, which is the number of customers, or actually the revenue from the customers that you have lost. And then you code your expenses, could be cost of goods, it also could be, marketing and sales. We code it that way so we can figure out cost of customer acquisition. So there's a whole bunch of KPIs associated with this income statement on the right here. But then you add your new annual recurring revenue, the customers that you obtain during the period. This could be monthly, annually, whatever. And then you end up with an ending annual recurring revenue. So this is a forward-looking income statement. It's not just a backwards-looking income statement. To run your business with traditional accounting statements is kind of like timing your cookies with your smoke alarm, because the information comes too late. At least this gives you a glimpse of what the future is going to look like, because you have a good experience with the churn rate. It's more predictable because you have ending annual recurring revenue. Your revenue and your cash flow and your workload is everything's more predictable. The number of products you need to make or number of services you need to deliver, it's far more predictable in this environment. And then, Bailey, if we go to the next slide, I'll just drop a statistic on you that I find fascinating from this model. Slide. Yeah, there you go. If a member retains membership and engagement for a year, you have a 90% chance of keeping that member for life. And folks, that's significant. In fact, I'm seeing, notice that Peloton is even advertising this. They have a 92%. They're trying to really push the fact that 92% of Peloton users, even though they bought the bike during COVID, they're still on it every day using it, but that's because when we subscribe to something, we have a different relationship with the business. It's a one-to-one relationship. And this is especially important if you're a professional. And if we go to the next slide, Bailey, I want to give you some resources where you can go. It's the slide before that. There should be a resources slide in there. Not sure why there's not. Nope. Okay. It's supposed to be before this one, but I guess it's not there. I don't know what happened, but folks, this is the radio show I do. If you go up to the homepage, this is at thesoulofenterprise.com. So thesoulofenterprise.com. This is the homepage. If you go up under categories, you'll see a tab for subscription model. If you click on that, you will see all the shows that Ed Kless and I have done on the subscription business model. That includes interviews with Dr. Paul. In fact, we've interviewed him 4 times. He wrote a book on DPC practices as well. So we discussed that. There's a ton you can learn from him. We've also interviewed the 4 leading authors in subscription. Teen Zoe, the author of the book Subscribed. John Warlow, the author of the book The Automatic Customer. Ann Janzer, the author of Subscription Marketing. And Robbie Kelman Baxter, the author of The Forever Transaction and the Membership Economy. All 4 of those authors, we've interviewed them. You can dive deep. We dive deep about their book, talk to them about subscription, what's going on. We've also done shows with lawyers who use this model, with CPA who uses this model. And we've done a lot of standalone shows where Ed and I take a topic like pricing or project management and how does it change because of the subscription model. So and it's all free. You can listen right there on the website, or you can get the Soul of Enterprise in any podcast app you use, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Android, whatever. there's a lot of information on that. And then Bailey, if you go to the last slide, um, this is just how you can get a hold of me. And I'm happy to take emails if you have questions, if you're interested about resources where you can learn more. I'm happy to correspond with you. You can find me on Twitter at Ronald Baker. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm one of the LinkedIn influencers. So I do a lot of posts and I put all my interviews that I've done on this model. And I do have a new book out on this very topic, the subscription business model, called Time's Up. And you can learn more about that at thesoulofenterprise.com/times up. And with that, folks, I hope I've given you some food for thought, and I look forward to the Q&A.